I'm Dr. Joseph MT, Department of Sociology, University of Mumbai. This is the ePathshala project on religion and society. Now we are looking at module 11, which is titled Navayana Buddhism. In this module, we look at the development of, or the historical context of the development of what is popularly called Neo-Buddhism or Navbaudh Samaj. Now this is also called Navayana Buddhism, and this name Navayana takes its origin from a press conference Babasaheb Ambedkar gave just after his conversion to Buddhism in 1956, where he said that he and his followers have got converted to Buddhism, not to the Hinayana or to the Theravada, but Buddhism in its original manner, and therefore to a new way of being Buddhist. And the term Navayana takes its origin from this particular rendering of Buddhist conversion that Babasaheb Ambedkar has given in this press conference. Now, this module looks at the historical context in which this particular conversion happened. This particular conversion is closely tied up with the movement led by Babasaheb Ambedkar for annihilation of untouchability, or in some sense annihilation of caste itself, and for the awakening of the Dalits and the untouchables in India. It is a continuation of his movement for civil rights, for example temple entry and the right to drink water from the public wells and public lakes. And when he saw that these kind of movements were not yielding any kind of a result, he declared that the only way that he and his people, the Dalits, can get that kind of a liberty, that kind of human rights, is only by quitting the religion that sanctions the practice of untouchability and exclusion by caste. He made this declaration in the year 1935, and he went on a kind of a discovery, a kind of an inquiry into a religious system in which he could make this switch, this conversion and this transition. And he found that in the Buddha and in the Buddhist religion, which he calls as a religion of principles in opposition to a religion of rules. So in Buddhism, he saw the principles of equality, fraternity and liberty, the very principles that is the constitutive of democracy, and therefore he considered Buddhism as something very suitable for modern democratic society, culture and polity, and therefore he mooted for the conversion of Dalits to Buddhism, and he himself took the lead on 14th October 1956 along with around 4.5 lakhs of his followers by reciting to them 22 vows in Nagpur. And this is the inauguration of Navayana Buddhism. Now in this module we look at this historical context, we look at the growth of Navayana Buddhism, and we look at the different socio-political ramifications that are happening within the fold of Navayana Buddhism. And this is what we will look at in this module. Now this is, we are just giving a synopsis. In this module we will try to understand the following. Introduction to Navayana Buddhism, the Mahar and the non-Brahmin movement in India, Babasaheb Ambedkar's appeal for conversion to the depressed classes, Babasaheb Ambedkar's critique of Hindu religion and the caste system, Babasaheb Ambedkar's concept of religion and his quest for new religion, Babasaheb Ambedkar's conversion to Buddhism and the genesis of Navayana Buddhism. And then we will have a short conclusion. Introduction. The word yana means method of practicing spirituality. Navayana or new vehicle is referred to the religion of Dalit Buddhists in India. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, fondly known as Bhim, and Babasaheb reinterpreted traditional Buddhist texts to fight against untouchability in India. Navayana Buddhism was born, and it marked a distinction from the three accepted ways of Buddhism, the Hinayana or Theravada, the Mahayana and the Vajrayana. The term Navayana derives from a press interview given by Dr. Babasaheb in 1956, in which he said, "I will accept and follow the teachings of the Buddha. I will keep my people away from the different opinions of Hinayan and Mahayana. Our Bauddha Dharma is the new Bauddha Dharma, Navayan." Eleanor Zealiot illustrates that the Mahars of Maharashtra have prominently used political means most consistently in order to better their conditions in society as untouchables. He started the Mahar and non-Brahmin movement for the upliftment of the status of the depressed class. They were dominated by Western views of democracy and principles of liberty, equality, and fraternity. As a part of his leadership, he repeatedly appealed to the fellow Mahars to join religious festivals of the upper caste groups and gain an entry to the temple as well as perform Vedic rituals for marriage ceremonies. These movements greatly helped in bringing consciousness amongst the untouchables about caste-based discrimination exercised on them by the upper caste Brahmins. Eleanor Zealiot argues that Babasaheb Ambedkar liberally used the public platform of Government Commission to demand rights for the depressed classes, which also included other lower caste groups along with the Mahars. Now, he used the constitutional method of engaging with the British administration and membership in different commissions to demand the rights for the depressed classes. He demanded that the depressed classes were entitled to their representation in the Legislative Assembly, as the untouchables could not understand the plight of the untouchables. Ambedkar, the thing is Babasaheb Ambedkar was very certain that unless due representation is given to the untouchables, their voice will not be heard in the Legislative Assembly. Therefore, Ambedkar organized a rally led by untouchables to assert their legal right to take water from the Chowdar tank. This was opposed by the Brahmins vehemently. Now, this was one of the public kind of protest spearheaded by Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in Mahad Taluka in Maharashtra in the Chowdar Lake, where Ambedkar and a group of untouchables marched to the lake and drank the water from the lake, which agitated the Brahmins around. After much agitation, the Mahad municipality passed a resolution on 5th January 1927 to the effect that the municipality had no objection to allowing the untouchables to use the tank. It was here that he also burnt copies of the Hindu law book, the Manusmriti. The drinking of water from the Chowdar Talab and the burning of the Hindu law book Manusmriti have turned out to be very iconic kind of interventions of Babasaheb in his fight to get the rights of the people, rights to untouchables. With this, a struggle for the human physical need of water and the citizen's right of access to public space was transformed into a challenge to Brahminical tradition. In 1930, Ambedkar launched Kalaram Temple movement. Around 15,000 volunteers assembled at Kalaram Temple Satyagraha, making one of the greatest processions of Nasik. On 13th October 1935, at a conference convened on the issue, famously known as the Yevla Conference, Ambedkar expressed that Hindu society is irredeemable and the social equality of the depressed classes cannot be achieved as long as they are inside the Hindu society. He appealed to his followers to cut their connections with Hinduism and seek solace and self-respect in another religion. He said that it is his misfortune to be born as a Hindu untouchable, which was beyond his power to control. However, what is in his control is to refuse to live under the ignoble and humiliating conditions that Hindu religion perpetuates. He openly declared at his conference that I solemnly assure you that I will not die a Hindu. Now we go to the next section, which is Ambedkar's appeal to the masses for religious conversion. In his speech titled "Why Go for Conversion," he said the following: "You have nothing to lose except your chains and everything to gain by changing your religion." He further said, "Because of untouchability, your merits go unrewarded. There is no appreciation of your mental and physical qualities. Because of it, you are debarred from entering into the army, police department, and navy. Untouchability is a curse that has ruined their worldly existence, honor, and name." He argued that just as Swaraj is necessary for India, so also a change of religion is necessary for the untouchables. He assured his people that they will not suffer any political consequences on changing their religion, and that they would get the support of the community which they choose. The conference declared by a resolution that the Mahar community was prepared for a change of religion. Ambedkar urged them from henceforth not to worship Hindu deities, stop the observance of Hindu festivals, and stop going to Hindu places of worship. Now, Ambedkar's critique of the Hindu religion and the caste system. Ambedkar vehemently critiqued Hindu religious practices from a rationalist and humanist point of view. Now, which is also available in his books like Riddles in Hinduism and his treatise on the annihilation of caste. He questioned the sinless nature of Hindu religious books, which he held responsible for the creation of the caste system. In Annihilation of Caste, he argued that Hinduism as a religion of rules is a compendium of ritual regulations based on caste ideology of hierarchy and untouchability. Timothy Fitzgerald points out the religious notions that Ambedkar was referring to were specifically the traditional Hindu ideological rank, which based on ideas of purity and pollution, which in turn manifests the phenomenon of untouchability. Now we go to understand Ambedkar's concept of religion and his search for a new religion. Through his writings like Annihilation of Caste, Buddha and his Dhamma, the Buddha and the future of his religion, which was a talk that he gave later, and an article in Mahabodhi Journal, he tried to develop a coherent account of the nature of religion and its relation to politics and power. He understood religion dichotomously and referred it to as religion of rules, by which he meant essentially caste hierarchy, and then secondly, the religion of principles, by which he meant essentially democratic egalitarianism, though not the extreme individualism of the West. For Ambedkar, religion was the driving force to all human activities. He often remarked, "Man cannot live by bread alone. He has a mind which needs food for thoughts." For him, religion, social status, and property were all sources of power and authority. He considered his Christianity, Islam, and Sikhism as his options to Hinduism for conversion. The Hindu Mahasabha feared that if the untouchables converted in such large numbers to another religion, it would weaken the majority community demographically and therefore electorally. Ambedkar declared that Islam and Christianity were outside the Hindu fold, which would make the depressed classes go outside the Hindu culture, and also that conversion to Islam and Christianity will denationalize the depressed classes. He thus chose Sikhism as a religion for conversion. He believed that if they embraced Sikhism, they will remain within the Hindu culture and will have some responsibility as for the future of Hindu culture and civilization, and he wasn't keen on breaking away from the majority community. Christoph Jaffrelot mentions that among the other factors accounting for his decisions were, number one, the fact that Sikh Dalits had conveyed to Dr. Ambedkar about the atrocities they suffered at the hands of the Jats, which undermine all hope of emancipation. Second, the opposition to such massive conversion among the Sikh political class, the Akalis, including Master Tara Singh, feared that the leadership of the community would be taken over, or at least that their autonomy would be diluted. Now, Ambedkar's conversion to Buddhism and the genesis of Mahayana Buddhism. 20 years later, that is from 1936 to 1956, after the Mahad and Bombay conferences, Ambedkar began to show immense interest in Buddhism. He pledged to revive and bring back the tradition of Buddhism which India lost 1200 years ago to Brahmanism. His quest for no religion for conversion was still very much intact. He passionately read ancient Pali texts in order to understand Buddhism and its system of belief. He gradually set forth the task of not just reviving but also modernizing Buddhism in India. For him, modernization of Buddhism was an effort aimed at bringing social transformation to Indian society. Ramendra, according to Ramendra, Ambedkar in his article Buddha and the Future of His Religion, published in 1950 in the Mahabodhi Society Journal, has summarized his views on religion and Buddhism in the following manner. Number 1. Society must have either the sanction of law or the sanction of morality to hold it together. Without either, the society is sure to go to pieces. 2. Religion, if it is to survive, it must be in consonance with reason, which is another name for science. Number 3. It is not enough for religion to consist of moral code, but its moral code must recognize the fundamental tenets of liberty, equality, and fraternity. Number 4. Religion must not sanctify or make a virtue out of poverty. Karunyakara in 2002 in his work points out that Ambedkar felt 3 steps were necessary for modernization to take place. Number 1, to produce a Buddhist Bible. Number 2, to make changes in the aims and objectives of the Bhikkhu Sangha. And number 3, to set up a world Buddhist mission. In his last speech delivered in Bombay in May 24, 1956, in which he declared his resolve to embrace Buddhism, Ambedkar observed that Hinduism believes in God and Buddhism has no God. Hinduism believes in soul. According to Buddhism, there is no soul. Hinduism believes in Chaturvarnya and the caste system. Buddhism has no place for the caste system and Chaturvarnya. It is obvious that Ambedkar regarded Buddhism as a much more rational religion compared to Hinduism rather than the most rational religion. On 14th October 1956, less than 2 months before he died, Ambedkar was ready to announce his new religion. He took Diksha conversion from the oldest Burmese Buddhist monk in India, along with 362,000 of his followers, and converted to Buddhism in Nagpur after a traditional ceremony. At the time of conversion, he took the following 22 vows, which were clearly designed both to explicate the teachings of the Dhamma in symbol form and to stress the distinctions from earlier Brahmanic traditions. Conclusion, Module 11. We have looked at the historical context and the development of Navayana Buddhism and the centrality of the figure of Baba Saheb Ambedkar to this and its connection to the movement of the Dalits. Thank you.